Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Change Podcast, Insights into Empowerment. And I'm going to add that we are now international because I interviewed someone from Germany yesterday. So I'm really excited about that. But I can't wait to meet our guest today and have you hear her story. She grew up in a non-traditional environment. She was raised in a home with over 100 children, if you can imagine that. I have two, and there were days that it was extremely chaotic. She suffered years of abuse, trauma, and instability, but that experience shaped her into who she is today. Who is she? She is a speaker, she is an author, and she is a mentor, helping others to overcome adversity and create lives rooted in personal integrity. And Debbie Greer Chamberlain, when I said the word integrity, I got goosebumps just now. Why is that? What does that mean to you?
Gosh, it's everything. In fact, right? And it's in every part of our lives. Like being a businesswoman, people used to say all the time, "Well, they're not the same in their personal as they are in their business," and that's so true. You cannot separate the two. But integrity, I think, starts within you. It's about the lies you tell yourself, or the honesty that you
Ah,
face, because that really determines your path that you're going to go on. Like, all of us are scared to really show the world who we are, or talk about to the world who we really are, and we try and hide that. And you can hide it all you want from the world. Lots of people do it. But if you really want to become the person of honor, the person that has a successful life, you got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to face that. And that's probably the hardest thing in the world to do, to face your weaknesses, to face your downfalls. But it's also recognizing your strengths, which isn't, just as important as recognizing your weaknesses. And so you got to be strong enough to be honest with yourself and not afraid. And then that's where you start building that foundation for the integrity, the honor, the character of your life. And, character is judged by uh, your actions, plain and simple. Like, I don't watch or listen to people's words, where I do listen to them, but I can assure you I'm always interested in their actions.
ah,
And that's always a red flag for me if their actions do not match their words.
I
Uh,
love that. I
yeah,
love that.
because it tells you honestly who people are, right? And
Absolutely.
so I just think integrity is everything, because I am going to be 68 in a month and a half. And what do you got left? What do you have left if you don't have an integrity? Like, I am proud
Absolutely.
to say I've been a businesswoman for years, and I'm well respected and admired. And that wasn't uh, by just whatever. It was so intentional. It was
Yeah.
so intentional. And I've been in sales and public relations, marketing my whole life. And people know if you keep your word or not. And I'm in a small town in Tennessee, in Brentwood and Franklin, and that stuff gets around really quick.
Oh, I bet.
Who people really are when they and being in my industry for about 30 years, um, it has served me so well. So now when I knock on the door, people have heard of me. And
Wow.
yeah, and it makes, and I don't mean that in the way of, oh, I mean that in the way that people know I'm somebody they can trust.
That's
They know that
wonderful.
I'm someone who keeps my word. They know
Wow.
that I'm someone who puts people before the financial. And that's another thing. I like pretty things. I always have, but I've worked very hard for them. But
Mhm.
I think anytime you put money above people,
Oh,
you can
yeah.
do that and you can get by with it. But in the end,
Yeah.
it's
Someday you have to look at yourself, and that's always hard.
you
But you
do.
didn't have an easy start, did you?
No, no,
And
absolutely not.
and I love that you're so open to discuss that. Can you tell us how that started with you living in a home with 100 other
It's
children?
I know, isn't that just the most amazing thing?
It's
And
crazy.
I learned to appreciate it as I got older. I can assure you, when I was younger, that it was head down, moving forward, don't think about it. But it sometimes even that catches up with you, and you have to face that trauma and stuff. But at 6 years old, our mother and father divorced. Our father was well out of the home, and there were seven of us altogether, born in 8 years.
Oh
Our
my
mother
God.
was 17 years old when she first became pregnant with my older sister. I'm the third child. We have one brother who passed away very young. But there were seven kids in an 8 year span. My brother and I are 10 and my brother passed last year, but we were barely 11 months apart. My sister and him were barely 11 months apart. Kenneth Wayne, who passed, there was maybe right at a year. My younger brother. Anyways, the biggest span is 13 months to the day for my two younger sisters. So, how well do you think all this is going to turn out?
I can't even, I have 8 years between my girls. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and there were still times that,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's like one a year.
It was less than one a year,
Yeah.
in fact. And, so I give her a lot of grace because she was
Sure.
uneducated. She was very lonely. She was very needy. And I think I came out of the womb tough as nails. I really do. It's kind of fascinating to explore all this and to look back, because when you're a person trying to succeed, when you have no safety net, then you look at things differently. But anyway, so my father and stepmother came into the picture. Our mother just up and left us.
Oh,
She basically the she left us alone a lot. So social services came to the house and they were basically going to take us away. And she was all right with that. So my grandparents, who are my father's parents, came and got my father and said, "You go get those kids right now." And so he did. We went to live with him and a stepmother who was 22 years old, who all of a sudden had, well, six kids at the time because my younger brother had passed, who beat us every day. She let us know for 4.5 years how much she hated the fact that we were a part of his life. And it was merciless. It really was. And I'm just starting my autobiography and I'm working on that right now. And it's been so hard to put those things on page to think of all that abuse and put it in words, which is why I didn't write it for the longest. How do you put those things
sure.
in words? But you do figure it out eventually.
Now,
And
did your father know she was doing that to
yeah,
you, children?
he
Oh,
did. But he was a selfish, mean man. Like
okay.
even when we were little kids, he would come home and my mother was so messy and we were so messy. We were so out of control. Like she would take the dining room table and pull it out to the yard under a tree and we'd sit on the table cross-legged eating mustard sandwiches.
Oh gosh. Oh,
And so he would come in and he would line us all up. She'd be at the end of the line. He'd spank us with the belt and then spank her. At, just
spank
right
the
on.
wife?
Yes, yes.
What?
And yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Any
No,
questions?
I'm trying
Yeah.
to envision why you would think you could not only punish the children, but then beat your wife. That is
Because
crazy.
he was just not a very good man. And
Okay.
he was a little guy, um, with a big ego. He was self-centered and selfish, which is why he chose our stepmother over us completely. He only took us because our grandfather insisted. But then they finally, after 4.5 years, um, we came home from school, fifth grade, got off the bus, they were gone, and he had taken us to Florida, and we were abandoned again and we were put in foster care in Florida. Our grandparents had been looking for us for all those years because they had a big fight one time. I mean, it's so much to go into, but it'll be in the new book. But they came to see us in Florida and found my younger sister and I sitting in a corner, which is what our stepmother made us do all the time. Just bent over, my grandfather lifted my shirt, and I was black and blue from the neck all the way
Oh,
up to my ankles, and they got into a fist fight in the living room. My grandfather was just like, and so he was going to call the police. Our father was, and so we never saw our grandparents again for the rest of that time, not knowing they were looking for us. Because you got to remember, this was 1969. How do
yeah.
you find people then, right?
Right, right. You know, we had rotary phones.
Right.
I mean, and there's going to be people watching this like, what's a rotary phone?
Yeah, right. But you know, if you want to hide, you can. But then
Right.
my father turned us over to the Florida Child Services. Went after he left us for about a month and a half by ourselves. There's a whole big story in there where he took my two little sisters with him and just left me and my brother and my other brother because my older sister had ran away into the orange orchards, and that's how my grandparents found us and knew kind of where to look. So as soon as we went into the system, my grandfather, I get my personality, I think a lot of it from him and dealing with people. He he searched until he found that judge in charge of the juvenile system. He went to his yard, his backyard, with cigars, Jack Daniels, and a wad of money that he got from the people at church and family members. And he paid that judge and he gave him cigars and Jack Daniels and said, "Find my grandkids for me."
Wow.
And he did.
Wow.
And
That
I
20
remember
years
the day
goodness.
they drove. Yeah, I remember the day they drove up and found us and took us from that foster home and brought
Oh
us
my
back to
goodness.
Nashville.
So in looking back, you said that shaped who you were.
Yeah.
How long did that take? What was the process from that little girl that was, you know, cowering in a corner to this vivacious woman that I'm talking to?
You know, it's so funny in writing the book. I remember when I first arrived at the children's home because once they got us all back to Nashville, they were too old and too poor to take care of 7 little kids. So they placed us in the Tennessee Baptist Children's Home, which is in Brentwood, Tennessee. And we lived in dormitories, all separated. None of us lived in the same building because it was done by age. So that was really what shaped me. That of living with 100 different wounded kids. They were
Um,
mean. They were mean. I mean, there were some sweet ones like myself and my brothers and sisters, but most has seen too many bad things in life. And children, they're fight or flight.
mhm.
I was flight. I would run and hide, like, and I was a rule follower. That made me a rule follower. I've always been a rule follower. To this day, I can't break that because it's such a scary thing to live with that. Somebody's gonna leave you again, so you better
Right.
follow the rules. And so,
That trauma is so
yeah,
embedded,
yeah.
isn't it?
But you know, I'm really I what I found when somebody asked me that same question, a preacher, probably about 16 years ago, and I said, "I'm not sure. I think it was all fear based." And he said, "You need to look into that because that's your story, and that's your story. God intends you to share." And I thought, well, why me? Nobody wants to hear what I got to say. I'm a businesswoman, man, and I do good at that, and I can't imagine. But I started putting pen to paper, and that's when I created Steppingstones, creating personal integrity, the workshop. I did it before I ever did the book, and I
Wow.
found out that it was forgiveness and
Mm.
acceptance. You got to forgive these people. You just do, or the bitterness and the anger,
Oh, it'll
and
eat you
it's going to
alive.
eat you alive.
Yeah.
And I don't
Honest.
hang on to that. I truly believe when God says He will take care of that He will take care of it better than I ever could. And I am not going to waste my time or energy. I could be and have been in a room when I was a younger adult in my 30s with my father and stepmother, and I'd completely forgiven them. I've never seen my mother since the day she left, so I couldn't give her that gift of letting her know. And by the time we found her, and that's a story all its itself, her whole family lived here in Nashville, but acted like we didn't exist the whole time until probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And then
Wow.
she passed, and they said, "Now y'all can get to know us," because they hid it from their whole complete family. And a man she remarried, but so that's a whole. I mean, there's so many layers to this. It's just
Oh,
fascinating.
I can't even imagine. And then to be big enough to practice forgiveness because I that's how I overcame a lot of my trauma was with
Right?
forgiveness. I didn't want to carry those big boulders
No.
anymore and I
Right?
released them. But so many people thinks that they think that forgiveness is letting someone off the hook.
Yeah, and it's
It's not that at all. And I tell
yeah,
people forgiveness is rather selfish. It's just for you.
it really is. And if they can think of it in the form of, if you're a Christian or a spiritual based person, if you can understand that God will handle that for you, and if you're not, I promise you, the universe and and karma will handle it. You
Oh,
might not get to see it, but it will handle it.
and
And
and it could be just internal with them, and we will
right,
never know it. But you're
right.
absolutely right in that assessment.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I agree
But
with
not only that, why do you want to carry that? I always say I'm a little vain anyway, so I'm like, why would I want to look ugly? Because all that hatefulness and bitterness oozing out of people is ugly.
it is. And
It is.
I have a picture of me 8 years apart,
Mm,
and the first picture is anger, animosity, hate infused, and the second one was when I forgave and released.
release.
And I look younger in
Right.
that picture. And
Yeah.
so it will change your looks, your
It
demeanor.
will.
It will change everything for the better.
Anytime I run across very angry people, very hateful people, I always know there's a story there. I always know it. And I've been fortunate enough, I've got this personality that people really do. I don't know. My best girlfriend always says, I can say anything to anybody and they'll listen. And she goes, I don't know, that's a talent you have. She goes, there's something that oozes out of you that they really do know that you're compassionate and that you'll give them more of a fair shake than most people ever will. And I do, because I understand life's so hard. And your journey is your journey, and it wouldn't exactly be how I would choose, or maybe you would choose, or someone else would choose, but it is their journey, and it's also their right to live it. Like I always say, you can mess up your life as bad as you want to. You
Yeah,
know, ain't
yeah,
nobody gonna stop you if you really want to mess it up. And
absolutely.
and it's their right to do so. But if you don't want to live like that, then you got to do some work on yourself. And so the second step is knowing who you are and what you'll stand for. People let people lead them by the nose, right?
Hmm.
And I never did that at the children's home. I
Wow.
was a loner. I kind of stayed there. I kind of stayed off to myself. I've always been accepted in all the groups as far as my foot kind of in it, to where people were kind and accepting of me, but I never fully, and I just never fully immersed myself into that until I became much older and learned about friendships. And I had a good friend say, "You're a terrible friend," and I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "But she was right. It made me start thinking." She goes, "You are so giving and kind and such a good friend to us, but you will never allow us to be a good friend to you."
Ooh,
Yeah,
ooh, that's a wake-up call, isn't it?
that was in my late 30s and early 40s. And my relationships started becoming deeper, and where I would allow people really into my life. And so, but again, these things that shape you, you're scared a little. So you're holding back, not
Yeah.
wanting to be too vulnerable to show people who you are, not wanting to get too close to people because they might reject you at some point, especially when you got abandonment issues. I mean, you can't be abandoned as many times as we were. I mean, even think about our grandparents dropping us off at the children's home as an 11-year-old,
Ugh,
and that drive out there and feeling that's the third time we've been abandoned. The people I trusted the most. But man, it took me years and years to explain to my grandparents it was the best thing they ever did for us. It taught me about people. I had to learn to either learn those personalities and how to adjust to them and recognize them, which is why I'm in sales. You can put somebody in front of me, give me 90 seconds, I'll tell you who they are. You know,
oh
and
my gosh.
so it gave me I always say God gives you every gift, talent, and ability you'll ever need if you'll use them. And who knew that a little girl at a children's home with over 100 kids, that I would learn personalities, that I would have this deep compassion for people, but I would also have this understanding. And I'm never rude to people. I just don't allow them in. Like, if you don't get very far into my circle, I can assure you it's because I figured something out about you. You don't belong there.
Yeah,
It's about boundaries.
I'm a little bit that way myself. I kind of hold back till I
Right.
assess if you are real, if you
Yes.
mean it, if you're,
Yes.
there's a lot of things that are really important to me, like compassion
Right.
and integrity.
Right.
So
It
I agree with you completely. Now, how did you start with your Stepping Stones program?
Well, like I said, when that preacher asked me, he said, "Do some research," and so I just narrowed it down to those steps. The third one's determination. I realized I kept getting back up. I'm the girl you kick me in the teeth, and I keep getting back up. In sales, I would keep showing up, and most people quit. And that's the first trait he recognized in me. He goes, you're just fearless. And I said, and I'm scared to death.
Oh,
That's what I even had my younger brother say to me sometime, well, you've been successful because you're not afraid of anything. I said, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death. I have been scared to death my whole life. But the difference is I stepped out in it because they can kill you, but they can't eat you. Plain and simple. And the biggest failures in my life have been the biggest steps to success for me, because recognizing the patterns in your life, like knowing who you are and what you'll stand for, recognizing those patterns is what you do, how you develop yourself. And don't repeat them. Everybody
no.
repeats them over and over again. I get so crazy about that.
They really do. It's almost as if they just have amnesia, and it's just over and over and over.
It's like a train wreck. I watch my friends and I'm watching them. And I'm like, girlfriend, I've known you for 25 years. Why are we doing this for the fifth time? It ain't going to end well.
It's like, please stop, please stop.
But again, I understand boundaries and it's their journey. So if you want to bang your head against that wall, you go right ahead. I'm
Yeah.
only here to help those who don't want to bang their head against the wall anymore.
Oh my goodness. And there's so many that seem to do. And
Right.
it might be out of fear, frustration, or whatever, because sometimes we don't recognize that in ourselves until we start doing all the inner work.
Right. And you don't recognize, I mean, like recognized a lot of patterns in my life. Like I hadn't been perfect, but the fear is what kept me in line. The fear that I had no safety net. I graduated from high school. 4 weeks later, they dropped me off at the children's home, from the children's home at Belmont University in Nashville. And that's where I lived until I graduated and left. May semesters, summer semesters, everything, because I had no home to return to. You age out in these things. People forget you age out, and there's no place to go. And so I lived there. So again, guess who was used to living in dorms? I was.
You, yeah,
It wasn't scary. I never had a lot of direction. I had house parents who were there, but not a lot of direction. Again, fear kept me from doing things that other kids did, because that realization of living what I lived from year 1 to 11 was enough to have this dream and this desire in me that life was not going to look like that if I could control it. And I made promises to myself. And that's another thing that I'll recommend people do. When you make promises to yourself, keep them.
yes,
You made them for a reason, keep them. I kept those promises. I kept the promise that I would never be in an abusive situation. I never have.
wow,
I refuse to allow that. That's You'll see me drawing back when I find people that have anger issues. If you can't control your emotions, that's another big gift from the children's home. I watch kids so out of control with their emotions. It makes sense. You can't live and see the trauma and the heartbreak that these children lived and not expect that, right?
right,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. But at some point, you got to learn to control those emotions. I always say the prisons are full of people if you give them back those 30 seconds.
Yes, absolutely.
Just the 30 seconds,
Wow.
right?
You've got so much knowledge that you gained
Mm-hmm.
from your experiences, but you put it to good use.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody can do
Yeah.
that. If you were talking to somebody that had even remotely a similar situation, what advice would you give them that could help create a person similar to you?
have a desire to want more for yourself. And if you're going to have children and build a family, have a love and a desire to make their life better than yours ever was.
Wow.
That was enough for me. Like when I had my two little children who are now grown ups, they're so fabulous. And, but I was never going to let that touch them. I was divorced for 20 years because the fear of allowing a man in my home with a child who was 8 and 10, almost 9 and 11, was not after what I'd lived through. So I lived without marriage and things like that. It was a choice.
Yes.
I'm happy to say that 21 years later, after my children were out of law school, out of college, everything, that I married an amazing man who was so worth the wait.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yes, he has given me everything I need, which guess what that turned out to be? That turned out to be safety, something I've looked for my whole life. And I was the only one who was able to give that to myself. But you need someone else to be your champion for safety. And a man is perfectly designed for that by God.
Right.
And I'm so safe with him. I'm his pretty princess. There ain't nothing I can do wrong.
Oh,
I'm a good partner because I realize the power I have over him, and I would never use that in a way. And that's what I want to say to women. When you got these good men, stop using your power as a woman to manipulate them and make life harder for them. I don't understand that. But it's probably because I waited so long and I understand what a gift it was to have this man come into my life. And in my first book, I write about I'd had back surgery and I'd been basically kind of paralyzed for about 7 weeks, had to lay on my tummy. Both my children were in college and I was by myself. And I had great girlfriends. I'm in the real estate mortgage industry, and I had these great girlfriends who'd come over every day, feed me and help me bathe until I could go and have surgery. But a week after surgery, my surgeon was amazing. And I always had my devotion, and I sit out on my screened-in porch and I said, God, I think I'm ready for a man in my life, but I need you to bring him to me. I don't care what he looks like, what he has, what he doesn't have, what he does for a living, how tall he is, how whatever. And I just want you to bring who you have chosen for me. And because I dated and stuff, and I was like, ugh. I had an image in my head of what I wanted. But I said, I need his name to be Michael. So I know you said him. Yeah, that's me. I'm that girl. And I had learned, I know, isn't that great? I had learned about Michael, the warrior angel at the children's home. It was a scary place. I would pray, God, put your angel Michael in charge of me. So it'd always been my favorite male name. 2 weeks later, I'm out with a bunch of girlfriends at a Mexican restaurant. He's there with his family. We're watching a country band at a Mexican restaurant in Tennessee. That only happens there, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he asked me to dance, and he goes, "You sure are a pretty girl." And I'm like, "Oh, great." And he goes, "What's your name?" And I said, "Well, Debbie." And he goes, "Well, I'm Michael." And I went, "Oh, but here's us. Here's what we do as women." Oh, dear God. I was like, "This is what you sent? Don't you think I'm a little cosmopolitan for this man?" Because that's what we do.
Yes.
But what I also knew, you don't ask God and then spit in his face. You do not do that. So I was obedient. I went out with this man 7 times before I allowed him to even come to my house, pick me up. And finally I was just honest. I'm like, dude, you intrigue me, but I'm just not that crazy about you. He goes, "Oh, I knew you were out of my league. Is this where you kicked me to the curb?" And I said, "Absolutely not. This is where I say to you that if you want to get to know me and me get to know you and see where this goes, I'm willing to do that because there are some things about you I find very intriguing." I didn't tell him I prayed for him by name because he would think, "Boy, this is crazy." We women are smart enough to keep some things to ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that's not going to work well. So I just told him that, and he said, "I already find you so beautiful and so smart, and He goes, I would be just so disappointed if you didn't want to see me again, but I will take as long as you need. And when you ask me to go away, I will go away. But I will be so sad, I know. And I thought, well, you don't get no better than that. So,
No.
and he said, may I please come and pick you up at your home because you're such a lady and that's what you deserve. And
Wow.
5.5 months later, I'm falling in love with this man, and he's everything I never knew I needed.
Oh my gosh. You know, that is like a fairy tale ending. And I absolutely love that. And we are at the end of our time, and it went way too fast. But I have to tell you, from an amazing story, amazing start, amazing ending, right down to the name. Right down to the name. So if you know someone sees this and thinks that can't happen, I think you're here to prove that it can.
Right.
And you are absolutely amazing. And I want to thank you so much for being on the Change podcast today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was such a pleasure. Well, it did. It went by so fast, like talking to a friend.
I think we are.
Yeah, I think we are too.
I'm pretty sure that I just fell in love with you. You're great.
Oh, thank you.
You know,
So
but what I want to tell our audience is if you have seen this interview, I know you're going to want to get a hold of Debbie. So I have put 2 links in her description where you can find her. And, you know, I'm going to go right after this and follow her on Instagram for sure. So, Debbie, I want to thank you for being our guest today. You are absolutely amazing. And to our audience, please, please reach out to this wonderful lady. Thanks, everyone, for popping in. And I'm Nicole Harvick. I will see you next week. Thank you.